Hello friends, before I start telling the story, please like the video, leave your comment, where are you from and what time are you watching, also subscribe to the channel. This will really help the channel grow. Thank you all. Now get comfortable and let's start. I didn't climb the ridge that night for any noble reason. I just wanted to shut the damn thing off. The old broadcast tower behind our ranger station wasn't even supposed to be powered anymore. It had been decommissioned in 2004, left to rust in the wind like every other forgotten structure out here. But for the last 3 weeks, every night after 11 p.m., it did the same thing. It turned itself on and started transmitting my voice. Not a recording. Not a glitch. My voice, live, as if the tower was another version of me standing up there in the dark, whispering into a microphone. The broadcast always began with the same words, "Don't go outside, he's already here." The first time I heard it, I thought one of the rookies was screwing with me. By the second night, I checked the call logs. Every ranger within 100 miles reported hearing it on their handhelds. The kicker? Some weren't even tuned to the tower's old frequency. It just bled through. The third night, it changed. The voice said my name. So yeah, I went to turn the thing off myself. The trail to the ridge was a narrow spine of wind-scoured snow and black spruce. No moon, no tracks, just the endless static hum from above, leaking through the trees like the whole forest was made of speakers. Halfway up the climb, my radio crackled sharply. "Don't go outside." I froze mid-step. That was today's broadcast. I hadn't even reached the tower yet. "He's already here." My own voice, but wrong, breathier, like I had lungs full of cold water. "You're not real," I muttered, tapping the radio like an idiot. "You're a malfunction." The speaker hissed, then, "Turn around." I didn't. At the ridge crest, the tower stood crooked against the sky, its metal skeleton whining in the wind. All the safety lights were dead. Yet the deck at the top pulsed with a faint blue shimmer, like someone was welding up there. But the thing that made my stomach drop wasn't the sound or the light. It was the figure standing on the platform. A silhouette. My silhouette. Same coat, same stance, same way I tilt my head when I'm listening to something far away. For a second, naive hope flickered. Maybe another ranger got here first. Then the silhouette bent forward at the waist in a way no human spine should bend and stared directly down at me. My radio popped. "He sees you." I forced my boots through the snow, climbing the last metal ladder to the maintenance deck. Every rung groaned under my weight. The tower felt warm against my gloves, like a living thing holding its breath. Halfway up, a burst of static rattled my earpiece. A sound followed, not my voice this time, but something moving on the platform above me. Slow, heavy, dragging. Something was up there, something waiting for me. I reached the top and found the platform empty, completely empty. No tracks, no footprints, just the transmitter booth with its door hanging open. The blue light leaked from inside. I swallowed and stepped forward. The booth was cramped, filled with old analog equipment that should have been dead for decades. But the radios were glowing, dials twitching, needles shaking like they were reading an earthquake. Then the speakers crackled to life. My voice spoke softly. "I knew you'd come." The door behind me slammed shut. I spun and slammed my shoulder into the door, but it wouldn't budge. The booth shrank around me, air vibrating like something huge was breathing through the wires. The radio dials turned on their own. Click, click, click. All of them shifted to the same frequency, the one reserved for Ranger emergency distress. I grabbed the mic and yelled into it. "This is Ranger Hale. I'm trapped at Tower 9. If anyone is receiving, respond." Nothing. Then a reply burst through. Not from the station, but from the speaker directly in front of me. "Help is already inside." Not my voice, not human. Something shifted behind the equipment, metal bending outward like pressure building inside the machinery. A shape pressed against the wall of the booth, stretching it like thin foil. Then I heard footsteps, outside, walking around the booth, slow, deliberate. Whatever stood outside wasn't worried about the cold. The steps stopped in front of the door. Then, silence. I held my breath. A second later, a whisper seeped through the metal. "Open the door." The voice was my own, but layered with something deeper, too deep, like a root system speaking from underground. I stepped back, knocking over the stool. The radio screamed in a piercing, warping tone. The walls vibrated violently, dust raining from the ceiling. Then the booth light flickered, once, twice, and went out. I was in total darkness. And something began crawling across the ceiling. Not skittering, not clawing, but sliding, like a body being pulled by unseen hands. It crossed above my head, stopped directly above me, hung there. I clamped a hand over my mouth to keep from breathing too loud. The speaker beside me hissed again. Through it came a perfect, calm recording of my voice. "He's standing exactly where you are." The thing dropped, right behind me. The booth door burst inward as I threw myself sideways out of the structure, tumbling across the icy platform. A tall, shadowed figure hunched in the doorway, its outline matching mine, but swollen, exaggerated, like someone had tried to redraw me from memory and got the proportions wrong. Its head jerked, tracking my every movement, but delayed, like there was lag between us. When I crawled backward, it copied the motion a second too late. When I grabbed the railing, it grabbed the air. When I whispered, "Don't," it whispered, "Don't," but with a wet gargle underneath. That's when I understood the broadcasts. The tower wasn't replaying my voice. It was practicing it, learning me, copying me, perfecting me. The creature stepped forward, joints bending all wrong. Its face slid into view, skin too smooth, lips too thin, eyes blank and pale like ice-coated marbles. But the jaw was mine, down to the small scar I'd had since I was a kid. It tilted its head, as if comparing us. Then it opened its mouth wider than I ever could. "You belong up here now," it said in my voice. I ran. Not down the ladder. There was no time. I vaulted over the rail and crashed into a drift of deep snow that swallowed me to the chest. My shoulder screamed in pain, but I forced myself free, stumbling into the trees. Above me, the tower lit up like a lighthouse, blue pulses, screeching static, my voice shouting warnings that weren't mine. Something climbed down the metal frame with impossible speed, joints cracking like snapping branches. I didn't look back. I ran until the lights were gone, the static faded, and the forest became so silent it hurt my ears. Back at the station, the other rangers stared at me like I'd seen a ghost. Maybe I did. Maybe I still am. Because every night since, the tower hasn't broadcast anything. Not warnings, not my voice, nothing. And yet, when the wind dies down around 3 a.m., if I stand outside the station and listen carefully, I can hear something faint from the ridge, a voice, my voice, calling my name. And every night, it sounds a little closer. The cabin wasn't mine. It wasn't even rented. I was doing a favor for a biologist named Dr. Alden, who needed someone to watch his research equipment while he flew out of Alaska for a 3-week conference. He said the cabin was isolated, but I didn't understand what isolated meant in his vocabulary until I got there. No road, no neighbors, no cell coverage. Just a crooked little structure sitting in the middle of 30 miles of spruce forest and untracked snow. He left me the keys, some warnings about wolves, and a single piece of advice. Ignore anything you think you hear at night. Sound carries strangely out here. I should have asked more questions. I should have never gone at all. Because by the second night, I realized the cabin wasn't sitting in the middle of untouched snow. Something walked around it in perfect circles, and it did it all night long. The first time I noticed the tracks was on the morning of January 4th. I stepped outside for firewood and saw a clean, perfect ring of prints around the cabin. One continuous loop, like something had paced around the structure for hours. They were long, humanoid, with a deep heel and 3 splayed toes. Each print was sunk nearly 6 inches into the snow, too heavy to be a person, too athletic to be a bear, and too deliberate to be anything that belonged to the natural world. I followed the ring for about 10 feet before something cold slid down my spine. Every footprint faced inward, toward the cabin, toward me. I didn't sleep that night. On the third night, the sounds began. At first, just soft crunches in the snow, measured, even, like something walking at a steady pace. I killed the lantern, sat perfectly still, and listened. Crunch, crunch, crunch. It circled counterclockwise, one full rotation every few minutes, never speeding up, never slowing down. Around 2 a.m. it stopped. The silence was worse. Then, from directly outside the wall nearest my bed, a long scraping sound dragged across the logs, like fingers, testing the seams between each timber. It lasted for nearly an hour. When it finally stopped, something whispered. Not a word, just my name, soft, breathy, too close. The cabin didn't have curtains, so I sat there in the dark, shivering under blankets, waiting for dawn. I didn't dare look outside. By the 5th night, I was losing it. I tried building a fire outside to see if light would keep the thing away. I didn't even finish stacking the kindling before the forest went completely silent. No wind, no creaking trees, no distant owls. Then, from somewhere between the tree line and the cabin, snow shifted. Something big moved through it. I backed away from the fire pit. My breath fogged in front of me. Crunch. Another step. Crunch. Something was walking toward the cabin, following the ring from the night before. My flashlight beam hit nothing but swirling snow. But I heard it, close enough to be invisible in the dark, but near enough that I could feel the vibrations through my boots. I retreated inside the cabin and locked the door. Seconds later, the steps resumed their pacing circles, calm, unbothered, like it had watched me panic and found it amusing. I didn't go outside again. On the 7th night, the pattern changed. Instead of quiet pacing, the thing began to drag something heavy behind it. Snow scraped, logs creaked, and the ground trembled with each step. Whatever it was carrying sounded large, like a moose carcass or something worse. And this time, it circled clockwise. Around 4 a.m., the dragging stopped. Footsteps approached the front door. One step, a pause, another step, then silence. I peeked through a crack in the window frame, just enough to see the snow-lit outline of the doorstep. Something stood just beyond the front step, tall, thin. A silhouette that seemed to bend in the wind, but the wind hadn't blown all night. Then it leaned forward slowly, placing something on the wooden step. A shape, small, round. I squinted. A face, a human face. Frozen solid, its eyes wide open with frost. I stumbled backward, falling over the chair and shattering the lantern. In a panic, I grabbed every piece of furniture I could and barricaded the door. Outside, the thing repeated the same 3 steps. Forward, back, like it was waiting to see if I'd open the door. It didn't leave until sunrise. I should have run then. But where? 20 miles from the nearest trail, 40 from the nearest town, all surrounded by forest so thick the sun only hit the ground for 20 minutes a day. Instead, I took photos of the footprints and the frozen face, then emailed Dr. Alden using his emergency satellite device. This time, I didn't hold back. His reply came 4 minutes later. Stay inside. Do not interact with it. I told you not to listen to the sounds. Listen to the sounds? That wasn't a sound. That was a face on my doorstep. I tried calling him, but the sat phone refused to dial. It only displayed one message, signal blocked, unknown interference. Unknown interference. Perfect. On the 10th night, the thing stopped circling. It stood still, completely still, for hours. Around 3:17 a.m., it tapped on the window, not with a knuckle, not even with fingers, with a face. A pale, frost-bitten human face pressed against the glass, the same one it had left on the doorstep, but no longer frozen. The lips twitched, the eyelids flickered, the jaw opened and closed like it was trying to form words. I scrambled backward across the floor, knocking over a water jug. The face on the glass whispered, "Let me back in." Not my voice. Not a stranger's voice. It was Dr. Alden's. The creature outside was mimicking him, or wearing him, or puppeteering whatever was left of him. I didn't get close enough to find out. That morning, I found a second ring of tracks around the cabin, then a third, then a fourth, each circle closer to the walls, each one deeper, as if whatever made them was gaining weight. The rings weren't random pacing. They were marking something, claiming something, maybe claiming me. The 12th night was the worst. The steps started earlier, around dusk, heavy, confident, excited. The creature didn't circle this time. It walked straight up to each window one by one, tapping glass with knuckles that sounded too long to be human. When it reached the window above the sink, it spoke again, this time in my mother's voice. "Open the door, sweetheart. I'm cold, please." My mother died 3 years ago. The voice cracked halfway through the word cold, like whoever or whatever was speaking didn't understand how vocal cords worked. I shoved the stove, chairs, and table against the door until the hinges groaned. At midnight, the roof creaked. At 1 a.m., something climbed across it. At 2 a.m., the chimney rattled like something was testing its width. At 3 a.m., the cabin went dead silent. Not quiet, silent. Even my own breathing felt muffled, like the air had thickened. Then in the center of the cabin floor, the wooden boards bulged upward. Snow leaked through the cracks. It was underneath the cabin. The boards snapped. A hand reached up through the floor, long, bone-white fingers tipped with black, crusted nails. They clutched the air, searching blindly. I grabbed the only weapon in reach, a fire poker, and smashed down on the hand. It didn't bleed, didn't flinch, didn't even react. Another hand appeared beside it, then another, then the face. That same frostbitten face, pushing between the floorboards like a balloon of skin being inflated from below. The mouth opened too wide. Let me in. I ran. I didn't take supplies, didn't take the sat phone. I took nothing but my boots and the last matches in my pocket. I sprinted through the forest until the cabin was just a dark memory behind me, and the entire time I could hear it following. Not running, walking, slow, patient, knowing I'd tire long before it did. I reached a ranger station by noon the next day, frostbitten and half delirious. They didn't believe most of what I said, but they flew a team out to the cabin. They never found it. No structure, no debris, no disturbed tree line, just a clearing full of perfect, concentric circles carved deep into the snow. Dozens of them. At the center, they found a single footprint, deep, heavy, 3 splayed toes facing outward, as if whatever made it had finally walked away. But here's the part that keeps me awake. Those prints were fresh, only a few hours old, which means it was still close. Maybe even watching the rescuers from the tree line. Maybe following the helicopter back. Every night when the wind dies and the snow settles, I hear it again. Crunch, crunch, crunch. One steady circle around my house, and each night, the rings get closer. The town of Bridgehorn had a rule everyone followed without argument. When the winter storms come from the west, lock your doors before the wind changes. People didn't explain why. They didn't need to. You could feel something wrong in those storms, like the snow carried voices, or the humidity held memories that weren't yours. I never really believed any of that. Not until the night the storm brought back a man who died 10 years ago, and he knocked on every door in town, starting with mine. Bridgehorn sits on the edge of the tundra with one road leading in and nothing leading out once the snow covers it. 1,500 people in summer, maybe 400 in winter. The only thing more relentless than the cold is the wind, which sounds like it's pulling at your name when it threads through the boarded houses. I used to work nights plowing the main roads. Boring work, but steady. On February 9th, the blizzard warnings hit early, gusts over 70, whiteout visibility, the kind of storm that makes the power grid tremble. I was prepping the plow truck when something slammed against the garage door. At first I thought it was debris. Then I heard it. 3 knocks. Slow. Deliberate. Human. I opened the garage door just a crack. A man stood there in the swirling storm, soaked in freezing snow, his coat stiff like it had been left outside overnight. But that wasn't what made the air leave my lungs. I knew him. Everyone in Bridgehorn knew him. His name was Ben Halverson, the fisherman who vanished in the 2015 whiteout. They found his boat capsized. They found his jacket washed ashore. They never found him. He was standing 3 feet from me, alive, breathing, pale as moonlit ice. "Ben?" I whispered. His eyes snapped up to mine instantly, and he smiled, almost too quickly, the corners of his lips jerking upward in an unnatural spasm. "Can I come in?" he said. His voice was wrong, too soft, too smooth, like someone controlling a puppet. "No, you can't be here," I stammered. The smile widened. "I don't like the storm," he said. "It isn't for people." Something moved behind him, a darker patch in the blizzard, a shape that didn't belong to any weather pattern. I slammed the garage door shut. The knocks started immediately. 3 slow hits, then silence. Then again, 3 slow hits, not frantic, not angry, just patient, like he had nowhere else to be. I ran to the radio and called dispatch. "This is Lucas at the maintenance garage. I think someone's outside. I think it's..." I hesitated. How do you tell someone a dead man is knocking on your door? The dispatcher spoke quickly, urgently. "Do not open the door. Lock everything. The sheriff is on his way. Stay off all exterior channels." Exterior channels? I checked the window. Ben was gone, but the storm had grown darker, as if something huge was swirling inside it, drawing the clouds downward. The power flickered. The radio crackled. A voice whispered through the static. "Let me in, Lucas." But it wasn't coming from the radio. It came from behind me. I spun around. The garage door was still closed. Still locked, still solid. The voice came again, right behind the metal. Ben, whispering my name. His breath pressed against the thin sheet of steel, fogging the area where his lips must have been. Please, let me in. It's cold out here. I backed away until I hit the tool rack. Go away, I said, because my mind had disconnected from logic. The whisper stopped. A single knuckle tapped the door. Slow, affectionate. I didn't go near it again. Sheriff Madsen arrived 15 minutes later. I'd known him since I was a kid. He didn't spook easily, but the moment I mentioned the name Ben Halverson, something in his eyes tightened. Come with me, he said, no explanation. He walked me out to his cruiser and locked the garage behind us. Snow hammered down on us like gravel. We could barely see 20 feet ahead, but he marched toward the town square. Listen carefully, he said as we pushed through the wind. If he knocks again, don't answer. Don't speak to him. Don't look at him through glass. Sheriff, that was Ben. I know what he looked like. I helped at his memorial. No, he said sharply. What you saw wasn't him. But Ben died 10 years ago, he said, and the storms have been bringing things back lately. Things that remember faces, not facts. I stopped walking. The wind nearly toppled me. What does that mean? He turned to me, eyes dark. It means you're not the first person he's visited tonight. We reached the town hall, where half a dozen people were gathered inside, shaking and pale. Everyone had locked themselves in. Some had blankets around their shoulders. Some held radios in white-knuckled fists. Then I saw Mrs. Hargrove, the old widow who lived 3 houses down from me, clutching her hands together like she was afraid they'd fall apart. He came to my window, she whispered to the sheriff. He knocked so gently, just like he used to when he brought fish. She swallowed hard. But he didn't blink, not once, not when I spoke, not when he smiled. Hargrove's husband had died the same year Ben did. They weren't the only ones. Every person in that room had seen somebody. A brother, a lost friend, a father who vanished during the 2008 storm. Sheriff Madsen shut the blinds and bolted the doors. That storm brings them back, he said quietly. But they're not people anymore. They don't talk right, they don't move right, and they don't die the way they should. The wind screamed against the windows like nails dragged across metal. Mrs. Hargrove's voice trembled. It's not them, is it? Not anymore. Sometime after midnight, the knocking started again. Not on the doors this time, on the walls, all around the building. Slow, methodical knocks, one after another, moving around the structure in a full circle. Someone whispered near the outer siding, so close you could hear the scrape of lips against wood. Let us in. It's too cold. Let us back in. It wasn't just one voice. Dozens spoke at once, layered, merging, trying to mimic human emotion, but failing. The sheriff held his shotgun tightly, but the barrels trembled. They don't break in, he said. They wait. For what? I whispered. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he nodded toward the nearest window, at the snow pressed against it. The silhouettes outside weren't walking. They were leaning, waiting, listening. I recognized faces from old-school photos, old obituary clippings, people whose bodies were never recovered. One face pressed closer to the window until its nose flattened. Ben. But his smile was wider now. Much wider. And his eyes were too bright, frozen but alive. Lucas, he said through the glass, voice muffled by the storm. Please, it hurts out here. Mrs. Hargrove sobbed quietly. The sheriff didn't break eye contact with the window. They can't cross the threshold, he said, not until someone answers the knock. Everyone stared at me, because I had answered. I hadn't opened the door, but I had spoken to him. He had heard me, he had learned my voice, and he had followed it here. The storm worsened. The lights flickered, then died. The backup generator hummed, but the windows steamed inward as if something warm pressed its forehead to the glass from the other side. Then the building groaned. Something climbed onto the roof. Snow cascaded down the windows as weight shifted above. Then more footsteps, heavier, heavier still. Dozens of them. The ceiling dust fell in thin lines. What do we do? I whispered. The sheriff stared upward, jaw locked. We wait, he said. They can't stay forever. Whatever animates them burns out when the storm breaks. But the storm didn't break. Not at dawn, not the next hour, not the hour after that. Instead, the wind died suddenly. The silence was worse. One knock hit the front door. Just one, hard enough to shake the hinges. Then Ben spoke again, clearer now. Sheriff Madsen, your son is outside. He wants to come in. The sheriff's face drained of blood. His son had died in the same storm as Ben. Before anyone could stop him, the sheriff stepped forward, hands shaking, eyes wide. "No," I whispered. "Don't answer." He placed his hand on the doorknob. The wood creaked. The metal clicked. The door opened 2 inches. A pale hand slipped through the gap, blue with frost, nails blackened. The sheriff screamed, slammed the door, and stumbled back as something outside dragged its fingers across the wood. "Let me in, Dad." The voice was perfect, too perfect, like someone replaying memories instead of speaking. The sheriff collapsed against the wall, sobbing silently. The knocking stopped. All the voices stopped. The entire storm died all at once, like a giant had sucked the air out of the sky. We waited an hour before unbarring the doors. There were footprints everywhere, hundreds of them. Human shapes, bare feet sunk into the snow deeper than any living person could make. They led away from town, out into the tundra, toward a place no one should walk. We followed the trail until visibility dropped. Then we saw them. Dozens of figures standing in the snow, backs turned to us, facing the storm clouds as they drifted east. They stood perfectly still, unmoving, unbreathing, waiting. When the clouds shifted, they all tilted their heads slightly, as if they were listening for something on the wind. Then, one by one, they dissolved into the blowing snow, like they were never there. No one talks about that night now. But when western storms gather in the distance, heavy and low, people in Bridgehorn lock their doors early. Some say you can hear knocking on empty houses. Some say the dead still wander during the worst blizzards, searching for someone familiar to answer them. And sometimes, late at night, when the power hums strangely and the windows fog from the outside, I hear a voice in the wind. "Lucas, please, it's so cold." And every time, the voice sounds a little more like me. Most hunters I know have a story they never tell around the fire. Something they saw once, something they pretend didn't happen. I never believed those stories mattered, just cold, lonely imaginations playing tricks. Then the ridge gave me mine. And mine wasn't a trick, because I found my own body frozen upright in the snow, staring back at me with my eyes. It started on a clear morning in late December, the kind where every breath feels clean and sharp, and the whole world seems made of glass. I was tracking a bull moose I'd been following for 3 days, big one too, with a busted tine on the right antler. Fresh prints cut through the powder. The bull was close, but there was something wrong about the tracks. They weren't spaced right, too close together, like the animal was limping or being dragged. The deeper I followed, the more the silence bothered me. Normally you hear something out there, tree groans, distant cracking ice, maybe a raven scolding you. But that morning, nothing, not even wind. It felt like someone had hit mute on the whole forest. Eventually I found blood on the snow, dark, frozen, spattered in a way that made my skin crawl. Not normal kill sign blood, not spill from a wounded animal. This was smeared in long arcs, like something big had been pulled. The moose prints ended at a clearing halfway up the ridge, but the dragging marks didn't. They continued deeper, toward an area nobody hunted. I should have turned back. Every instinct told me. But something else kept whispering. You need to see where it goes. The dragging trail led up a narrow rise bordered by spruce leaning inward like spectators. Halfway up, I noticed a second set of tracks. Human, at least mostly human. Bare feet, in the snow, in the dead of winter. The prints were deep, too deep. Whoever made them had to be heavy. Yet the stride was long, unnaturally long, as if they'd moved without sinking fully, gliding more than walking. And here's the part that made me tighten my grip on the rifle. The bare footprints overlapped the moose tracks perfectly, step for step, like something had been following the bull so closely that their prints blended together. Following it or imitating it, I kept going. The prints led straight to the top of the ridge. That's where I saw it, my body. I didn't scream, didn't move, didn't even breathe. The frozen figure was standing, not lying, against a thick spruce tree. Snow had built up along the shoulders, like it had been there for a long time. The face was half covered in frost, beard stiff with ice, eyes open, eyes identical to mine. For a long moment, I thought I'd stumbled on someone else, someone who just happened to look like me. But the closer I looked, the more details I recognized. The scar under the chin from a fishing hook when I was 9, the flattened nose bridge from a high school fight, Even the rip in the left jacket sleeve where I'd brushed against barbed wire last month. It wasn't just similar, it was me, exactly me. I stepped closer. The frozen version of me stared forward, unblinking, mouth slightly open like it had died mid-breath. The skin was tinted blue. Frost crystals glittered along the eyelashes. "How?" I whispered. The forest didn't answer, but the snow behind the frozen body did. It shifted, slowly, deliberately. Something was hiding behind the spruce, something breathing. The entire frozen tree line seemed to be holding its breath with me. I raised the rifle. The breathing stopped. Then a voice, my voice, came from behind the tree. "Don't shoot." Every part of me recoiled. It wasn't spoken right. The pitch was perfect, but the rhythm was wrong, like someone trying to remember how to talk. I didn't move. Then the voice said, "Come here, I need help." I stepped back instead. The frost-covered version of me against the tree didn't move. But the thing behind the tree shifted again, and a pale shape slid into view. Not all at once, piece by piece. First a hand, long, thin fingers with joints placed slightly too far apart. Then part of a face, an imitation of my cheek, stretched tight as if molded over bone thinner than a human skull. Then the rest of it stepped out, and it was wearing my shape like clothing, like it had studied me, learned me, but built something slightly off. Its arms hung too low, its posture was hunched, its mouth was wider, too wide, filled with teeth too flat and too many. It smiled with my smile. Snow crunched behind me. I spun. Another frozen figure stood 10 yards away. Identical to me. Same face, different pose, half buried in the snow as if it had been placed there recently. I turned again. Another one, and another. I counted 6 in total. 6 frozen versions of myself standing at different points around the clearing, watching, waiting. The imitation me tilted its head. "You left," it said, "but you came back." "I don't know what you are," I said, backing away. It took a step toward me. Not a threatening step, a rehearsed one, like a child taking its first careful walk. "I'm learning," it said. "I learn you." I aimed the rifle. It smiled wider, unblinking. "You won't shoot," it said. "You don't shoot yourself." It pointed a long finger at one of the frozen copies behind me. That one tried. My stomach dropped. On the chest of one of the frozen versions was a bullet hole, right through the heart. The frozen figure's face was twisted, not in pain but in surprise. The snow around its boots disturbed as if it had fired a gun and then stopped being alive. "You kill you," the creature said softly, again and again. "What happens to them?" I whispered. The creature blinked for the first time, a slow, unsettling motion that dragged frost from its lashes. "They stop. I keep," it said. "I make new." My blood went cold. It stepped closer. "You come. I make one more." I bolted. The forest exploded with crunching snow, 6 frozen versions of me suddenly collapsing behind me as if dropping from unseen strings, falling face first into the powder. The imitation me didn't fall. It chased. I don't remember running. I remember trees blurring past, branches slicing my face, my lungs turning to fire, my legs burning. But behind me I heard its voice. "Stop. Don't run from yourself." The more distance I put between us, the more its voice changed. Lower, rougher, angrier. "Come back." I didn't look back, not once. I made it to the highway by dusk, collapsed on the ice, was found by a trucker who nearly hit me. I tried telling the officers what happened. They chalked it up to hypothermia hallucinations. A week later, I went back with 2 rangers. The frozen versions of me were gone. The tracks were gone. The body nailed upright to the spruce was gone. But the drag marks from the moose, still there, deep, fresh, leading into the same trees. One ranger followed them 5 yards before stopping dead. There was a new set of footprints, bare feet, deep, heavy, stride too long, and at the end of the trail, something that made my blood turn to ice, a face pressed into the snow. My face, perfectly printed, like something had lain down with its cheek against the ground. Smiling, I moved away from Alaska 3 months later, but last week a package arrived with no return address. Inside, a photo printed on cheap paper, a forest clearing, a spruce tree, and a frozen figure propped against it, frosted solid. Me. Still standing, still waiting, still watching. A note was written on the back in shaky lettering. "I learn you, almost perfect now. Come back so I can finish." Every night since, I've dreamt of snow crunching outside my window, slow, deliberate, practicing my walk. And last night, I heard my own voice whisper through the vent, "I'm close." The lake wasn't usually this quiet. Even in the dead of winter, Hollow Jaw Lake had a pulse. Cracking ice, distant snowmobiles, the occasional owl buried somewhere in the tree line. But that night, on February 2nd, it was silent. It's the kind of silence you feel more than hear. Like the air gets heavier, like the lake is holding its breath, and maybe it was. Because something crawled out of the hole I drilled in the ice. Something that had been listening from below. I wasn't supposed to be out there alone. My brother Liam usually fished with me, but he'd come down with the flu. I told him I'd stay home, but he waved me off like it was nothing. "You've gone out on that lake since you were 12, he said. "Just don't stay past midnight. You know the stories." Everyone knew the stories. Hollow Jaw Lake wasn't named for fish. Still, I wasn't superstitious. Not much anyway. But when midnight crept up on me and the lantern dimmed, I realized being alone on that lake was different. Wrong. Like someone watching you has finally stepped close enough for you to feel their breath. I drilled the hole through 30 inches of ice, thick enough to hold a truck. The water below was ink black. I dropped the line, took a swig of coffee, and waited. About 20 minutes in, I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. From under the ice, I froze. Fish don't tap, currents don't tap. Nothing natural taps like knuckles. I leaned closer. Another tap, then 3 more. Slow, rhythmic, intentional. I told myself it was just shifting ice. But then a voice rose up through the hole, muted, warped, like someone speaking from inside a glass jar. Cold, cold, cold. I shot to my feet so fast I kicked the lantern over, sending it rolling across the ice. "Hello?" I yelled before I could stop myself. The voice responded instantly. "Cold, please." It sounded human, broken, like someone drowning just beneath the frozen surface. No one should have been under that ice. No one could have survived down there. I crawled toward the hole despite every instinct telling me not to. My breath fogged the air in heavy pulses. The voice came again, "Help me." I leaned over the dark water. Something moved, fast, too fast. A pale shape shot upward, an arm thin, almost skeletal, waterlogged, but unmistakably human. It shot through the hole and grabbed the edge of the ice. I scrambled backward, slipping on the frost. The arm was wrong, too long, joints slightly misplaced, fingers too many. Something else rose behind it. Not a man, not a person. Something that had once maybe seen a person and tried to copy its shape. It dragged itself upward, shoulder blades jutting through gray skin like broken wings. Water streamed off it in sheets. Its face appeared next, lipless, eyes too round, pupils spinning like they were adjusting to the surface world. It gasped, not for air, but like it was tasting it. Then it whispered, in a voice trying too hard to be human, "Warm, you're warm." I bolted for the snowmobile. Behind me, the creature slammed its limbs against the ice, pulling its torso free. The ice around the hole cracked and spider-webbed. Something about the way it moved reminded me of a spider. Too many joints, too much flexibility. "Don't run," it croaked. "Please, don't." But its voice wasn't pleading. It was learning, trying, clumsy, wrong. I yanked the starter cord. The engine sputtered to life. The creature shrieked, not like an animal, but like a man whose vocal cords were just strings of ice. It lunged. The ice beneath it groaned, then cracked, and the thing plunged back into the black water. The lake swallowed it instantly. I didn't look back again. I burst into my cabin 20 minutes later, shaking so violently I could barely remove my gloves. Liam was still awake, pale and sweating from fever. "What happened?" he asked. I tried explaining, but the words tangled in my throat. "That wasn't a fish," I finally said. Someone was, under the ice. His expression shifted slowly, from concern to fear to resignation. "You stayed past midnight, didn't you?" he whispered. What does that have to do with anything?" "You know the stories," he said, voice cracking. "People hear voices late at night on the lake, voices of drowned men, voices that try to pull you down with them." "That wasn't a drowned man," I snapped. "That wasn't anything human." He didn't argue. He knew. Everyone knew. But no one talked about it. Sleep was impossible. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw that twisted face rising out of the hole. The next morning I returned, against my better judgment, but I had to see if the ice had broken or if anyone had followed my tracks. The hole was still there, but it had changed. The edges were frozen tall, like something had climbed out, not fallen in. The snowmobile tracks behind me had been dragged over, smoothed out, as if something had followed them, then erased the trail. Then I saw the prints, not human prints, nor animal. Long, slender, barefoot, 3 central toes with 2 small ones on the side. Perfectly spaced, perfectly straight. They led away from the hole, toward the woods, toward my cabin. I ran. I burst inside to find Liam standing in the middle of the room, staring at the floorboards like something was speaking to him through them. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. "No. What did you hear?" He turned slowly toward me. His face was pale, sickly, his eyes unfocused. It said my name. The blood drained from my body. "Liam," I whispered, grabbing his arm. "We're leaving, now." But he didn't move. "It said it was cold," he murmured, "and you were warm." His pupils dilated. "Too far. Way too far." I looked down. Water pooled beneath him, thin, almost invisible, dripping from his pant legs. "Liam," I said, voice failing, "did you go outside?" He didn't answer. Then he blinked in a slow, unnatural curve, like thawing wax, and he smiled. Not Liam's smile. "Warm," he whispered. He lunged. I dodged, knocking over the table. I ran through the back door into the snow, not stopping to look behind me. His footsteps thudded in the powder, heavy, dragging, uneven. Wrong. I reached the tree line before I dared turn. He stood in the doorway, hands too long, posture too loose, eyes too bright. "Don't leave," he croaked. "It's cold." Behind him, water dripped steadily onto the wooden floor, but the lake was miles away. There was no way he could have gone back. Unless it never fell in the lake, unless it never left the hole, unless what rose out of the ice had followed me home and wore my brother like a coat. I didn't go back to that cabin. Not that night. Not ever. Search teams found Liam 3 days later sitting beside the lake hole, frozen solid, face turned toward the water, mouth open like he'd been calling to someone below. The authorities said he fell through thin ice and froze to death after climbing out. An accident. Nothing more. Except the ice around him was 4 feet thick, and they found no footprints leading to the hole. Not his. Not anyone else's. Just one set. Those long, barefoot prints, leading back into the lake. I moved away that spring, but every winter night since, when the temperature drops low enough to silence the world, I swear I hear tapping through my walls, slow, rhythmic, like knuckles on wood. Sometimes a voice comes with it. Warm, let me in. And once, just once, the voice whispered both our names, mine and Liam's, like it had kept them and wanted more. Most towns in Alaska go quiet in winter. But Ridgeglass didn't just go quiet, it disappeared. Streetlights dark, porches empty, shutters frozen mid-creek, like the whole place exhaled once and never breathed again. I should have never taken the midnight test run. But the route supervisor insisted every driver complete it before the season's first school day. And I was the new guy, fresh from Anchorage, thinking I understood isolation. I didn't. Not until that night. Because I drove a school bus into a town that shouldn't have existed, picked up passengers who didn't speak, and watched all of them vanish before sunrise. The run sheet was simple. Route 7B, midnight dry run drive from Cedar Ridge Depot to Ridgeglass Township. Test all 15 stops. Return by 3 a.m. "Why test it at midnight?" I asked. The supervisor shrugged. "Tradition. Town requests it every year." "Even though the schools aren't open yet?" "You'll see," he said, avoiding my eyes. I should have pushed harder. The first hour was uneventful. Just snow, trees, and headlights carving out the same patch of road like a looped video. I didn't see another car. Not unusual that deep into the interior. But then the radio crackled. Not the depot channel. Something older. Thin, distant, humming like a wire vibrating in a frozen attic. "Route 7B. The voice strained through static. I picked up the mic. "This is 7B, I said. "Who's transmitting?" No answer. Just a slow, glitching whisper. "They're waiting." I paused the bus right there on the road. Let the engine idle. My fingers hovered over the mic. "Who is this?" The radio clicked off mid-breath. The snow outside fell suddenly heavier, swallowing my headlights in a blinding wall of white. I should have turned back, but the road behind me seemed darker than the one ahead. So I kept driving. At 1:12 a.m., I reached the Ridgeglass sign. Except, Ridgeglass didn't have a sign anymore. The town was abandoned years ago after an avalanche rerouted the river, choking out half the valley. Google Maps showed nothing but a collapsed grid of old foundations. Yet the sign in front of my bus was new. Fresh paint, reflective lettering. "Welcome to Ridgeglass School Zone." A breeze, too warm for the season, brushed my face through the cracked window. It carried the faintest smell of wet leaves and something earthy, like freshly turned soil. I shifted the bus into the first stop. Stop number 1, Willow Street. The porch lights of every house were on, but the windows were dark, curtains stiff, driveways untouched, like mannequins of a neighborhood. Then something moved. A small figure stepped out from behind a mailbox, child-sized, wearing a backpack. They walked toward the bus with stiff, controlled steps, like someone guiding them through wires. I opened the doors. They climbed on without looking at me, sat in the front seat, folded their hands. I cleared my throat. "Hey there, you're out late." The kid didn't respond. I checked the mirror, eyes forward, unblinking. The air around them fogged unusually fast, as if their skin was colder than the bus heater. My gut twisted, but the run sheet said to continue. Stop number 2, Dogwood Lane. 2 more figures waited, both children, both wearing identical coats. They entered without speaking. Sat behind the first kid. Their breathing made no sound. Their bodies didn't shift with the bus's motion. Stop number 3 added 3 more. Stop number 4 added 5. By the time I reached stop number 7, the bus was half full. Every child sitting perfectly upright, hands pressed together, chins lowered. 23 total. But Ridgeglass never had that many kids. Hell, it didn't have any anymore. This wasn't a school route. This was a procession, and I was the driver. At stop number 9, I opened the doors, but no one came. The children on the bus all turned their heads toward the open doorway at the same exact angle. The sound of their necks creaking in unison punched my heart up into my throat. Something approached through the snow. A taller figure, not a child. I tensed, gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles cracked. But the figure stopped just outside the headlight glow, too shy to step forward, or too cautious. Then it spoke, soft, raspy. Don't look at their faces. A shiver tore through me. "Who are you?" I whispered. The figure stepped forward, hood lowered just enough to reveal a jawline cracked with frostbite. "Someone who used to drive this route." I stared. "Used to?" "They only ride with the living once," he said. "After that, you join them." I swallowed. Hard. "What are they?" He looked past me, past the rows of stiff, silent passengers. Children who never made it to school, parents who never came back from shifts. Ridgeglass froze in time the night the river shifted. But some things, he paused, some things refused to stay buried. My body went numb. "I need to turn back," I said. "I'm ending the run." He shook his head. "You can't. Not now. They've boarded." "What happens if I stop?" His eyes glistened in the dim light, reflecting something behind me. "You don't want to find out." I glanced toward the mirror. Every child was staring at me, all at once, like they'd been waiting for me to look. The man outside stepped back. "They're almost finished with you." "What does that mean?" "Drive," he hissed, "before the last one shows up." My heartbeat punched my ribs with each beat. "The last one?" He didn't answer. He just faded backward into the storm, disappearing like smoke. Stop number 13 was at the edge of some twisted cul-de-sac. The houses here were worse. Sunken, roofs collapsed, one bent sideways like it had been kneeling. The door creaked open. A cold gust poured in. Something stepped onto the first step. Not a child, not tall, not short, just wrong. A silhouette that flickered strangely, like a bad edit in a video. It climbed inside, each foot hitting the steps too softly, as if it weighed nothing. The children didn't react, but the air did. The atmosphere inside the bus tightened like a coiling rope. The figure moved down the aisle slowly, cloth dragging, feet sliding, breath non-existent. It sat in the very last row, directly behind my seat. My skin prickled with needles. I started the engine. The last 3 stops shattered any illusion of time. The houses changed shape when I blinked. Street signs repeated themselves. The radio whispered names like it was reading a memorial list. Finally, the run sheet ended at Stop 15, Old Ridgeglass Bridge. Except there was no bridge, only a river frozen mid-roar. The kids stood up together, one row at a time, perfectly timed. They filed toward the back door, where the last figure waited. I watched through the mirror as each child stepped down into the snow. Each vanished the moment their feet touched the ground, rippling into the storm like candle flames blown out. The last figure stood slowly, turned toward me, and whispered, "Thank you for bringing us home." A hand, ice cold, too light, touched my shoulder from behind. I screamed, elbow jerking backward, but no one was there. When I looked back through the window, all 24 figures stood on the frozen river, perfectly still, facing me, waiting. Then they sank, straight down into the opaque ice as if gravity suddenly reversed, one by one, until the river was empty. I floored the bus and didn't breathe until the Ridge Glass sign vanished behind me. The radio crackled a final time. Route 7B, complete. When I reached the depot at 3:06 a.m., the supervisor was waiting. "How was it?" he asked, eyes hollow. I didn't answer. He nodded like he already knew. "You drove the route," he said quietly. "That's all that matters." I quit the next morning. 3 nights later, I woke to a scraping sound outside my apartment. Metal on asphalt, slow, rhythmic. I pulled back the curtain. A yellow school bus sat idling on the street, route number painted on the side in flaking white. 7B, the doors opened. A cold wind poured out. 24 small silhouettes sat inside, hands folded, heads bowed, waiting. The last figure stood at the back, staring through the windshield, straight at me. Its hand rose slowly and beckoned. I dropped the curtain and backed away, but the radio next to my bed crackled on. "Driver, your route isn't finished." And outside, the bus door remained open, waiting. There are 2 kinds of northern lights in Alaska. The kind tourists pay thousands to see, gentle greens drifting like paint across the sky. And the other kind, the kind locals don't talk about. The kind you only see when the temperature drops low enough to hurt your teeth. The kind that whispers. I never believed any of that until the lights said my name, and then they asked me to follow them. It happened last December, on a night colder than anything I'd felt in my life. Wind chill around 45, air so sharp it sliced through 3 layers of wool. I was helping my cousin Ray check the line of research cameras near the edge of the tundra. Ray wasn't afraid of anything, or so I always thought. But that night, when the first faint ribbon of blue-green light bloomed above the hills, Ray froze mid-step. "Don't look at them directly," he muttered. "What, the aurora?" "That's not the aurora." I laughed. He didn't. He grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise. "Keep moving. Don't listen. And no matter what, don't answer." I stared at him. "Ray, they're just lights." He swallowed. Didn't say another word. Just kept walking faster. That's when I knew something was wrong, because Ray never ran from anything. We were halfway across the frozen flat when the lights changed. They brightened so fast the snow lit up like someone had flipped a stadium switch. The sky pulsed neon green, then blue, then violet, the colors too saturated, too thick, like liquid bleeding across the clouds. The air hummed, not like wind, more like electricity inside my skull. A sound rose beneath it, soft at first, almost like wind swirling in a narrow canyon. Then it sharpened, a whisper. My breath stalled. I turned around despite Ray's grip, and the lights, they moved, not drifted, not rippled, moved. The colors bent inward, tightening, spiraling like a giant funnel above us. Ray grabbed my coat. "Don't look at it." But I couldn't help it. The lights elongated into something that looked like a shape, almost human, almost standing, made of shimmering blue fire. And then, it said my name, perfectly, clear as if someone stood a foot behind me. "Ethan." The whisper didn't come from the sky. It came from inside my head. Ray shoved me, snapping me out of it. "Run." We bolted across the frozen flat. My boots punched into snowdrifts. My breath burned in my throat. Behind us, the humming grew louder, rhythmic, insistent, and the lights followed, not drifting, chasing. Every few seconds, another whisper curled into my ears. "Ethan, don't run. Come back." The voice wasn't threatening. It was sad, begging. That made it scarier, because sadness shouldn't echo across the sky. We reached the tree line and collapsed behind a cluster of black spruce. The lights slowed but didn't fade. They hovered above the frozen flat, swirling in colors I'd never seen before, deep indigo streaked with red veins. The trees shook, snow rattled off the branches, the air vibrated, and then something stepped between the trees, a dim blue outline, human-shaped, too tall, head tilted at an unnatural angle, arms slightly too long like someone had stretched them. It flickered as it walked, moving like a glitch in reality, frames missing, positions shifting too quickly. Ray grabbed my mouth before I could scream. The figure lifted a shimmering arm and pointed directly at me. "Ethan," my name again. But the voice didn't echo. It resonated inside my chest, like the sound was coming from my own bones. Ray dragged me backward until the figure blurred into the trees. We didn't stop until we reached Ray's cabin 2 miles away. He locked every door, even the crawl space hatch. Then he lit every lamp. I stood shaking. "What the hell was that?" I demanded. Ray didn't answer right away. He looked like a man remembering something he'd spent years trying to forget. Finally, he said, "You looked at them too long. Now they know you." "Know me?" "They know your shape, your voice, your fear." I swallowed hard. "And they talk." "They don't talk," he whispered. "They mimic. They echo people they've taken." "That wasn't my voice." "You sure?" My stomach twisted. I wasn't sure. Not anymore. I stayed at Ray's place that night on his insistence. Snow hammered the windows until everything outside looked like static. Every few hours I heard something brush against the roof. Not branches, not animals. Something walking. At 3:14 a.m., the power went out. The room plunged into darkness. Ray's voice whispered from the far corner, "Ethan, don't move." I froze. Cold washed down my spine. Because Ray was asleep in the bedroom, I could hear him snoring. That voice wasn't his. It sounded close, too close. Like someone kneeling right beside me. Slow, deliberate breathing filled the dark. I crawled backward until my hands hit the doorframe. I fumbled my way to Ray's room, slammed the door shut, and locked it. Ray jerked awake. "What's wrong?" Something knocked on the other side of the door. Not a fist, something lighter. Finger joints too long, clicking. Then, "Ethan, let me in." Ray pulled me close. "That's not me," he whispered. "That's never me." The doorknob twisted slowly, metal scraping. Click, click, click. Ray grabbed a hunting knife and held it tight. The twisting stopped. Silence. Total silence. Then, a single whisper through the crack under the door. "You belong out here with us." My blood froze. After a moment, the footsteps drifted away, tapping lightly across the cabin floorboards, then up onto the roof, then gone. We didn't move again until the sun rose. The next morning, Ray forced me into his truck and drove until we reached town. I crashed at a motel for 2 nights straight, too scared to close my eyes for more than a few minutes. When the clouds cleared on the 3rd night, I made the mistake of looking out the motel window. The northern lights were low, lower than I'd ever seen them, hanging just above the treetops, swirling, slow, purposeful. They formed a shape again. A tall figure standing still at the edge of the parking lot, made of shifting blue and green ribbons. Then a whisper slipped through the thin motel wall. "Ethan, come outside." I backed away. The whisper turned pleading, childlike. "It's lonely out here. Please, please." The lights dimmed as if a giant breath sucked color from the sky. Then the shape dissolved. The next night, another whisper came. Then the next, and the next. Always after midnight. Always saying my name. Always in a voice that sounded a little more like mine. Ray called me yesterday, panicked. "They're coming closer," he said. "They don't forget people who look at them. They don't stop." Last night was the worst. At 2 a.m., someone knocked on my motel door. 3 slow knocks. I didn't move. Then a whisper seeped through the keyhole. "Ethan, open the door. You already know what we are." I pressed my back against the wall. Feet shuffled outside the door. Bare feet, dragging, scraping the carpet. Then the whisper changed, mimicking me perfectly. "Please, let me in." I didn't touch the door. I didn't breathe. After a long pause, something sighed, a disappointed sound, and walked away. It's nearly midnight now. The sky outside my window is glowing already. Blue, green, violet, moving too fast, whispering too clearly. I hear my name again, not from outside, but from above, from the ceiling, like something pressing down on the roof, bending it inward. "Ethan, come see us." If the lights knock on the door again tonight, I don't know if I'm strong enough to stay quiet, because the voice they're using now, it sounds exactly like me. Not close, not similar, me. And if something out there knows my voice that well, it means they've been listening for a long, long time. The worst part wasn't that the snowmobile came back on its own. It was that someone was riding it. Someone I knew. Someone who died hours earlier. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start with the one rule everyone in Juneau Ridge followed. If the forest goes quiet, turn around and leave. The quiet means something else is listening. I ignored that rule once, and I'm still paying for it. My friend Cody was the kind of guy who thought Alaska was one big playground. Every winter, we'd race snowmobiles through the powder between Juneau Ridge and Tanglewood Bluff. Most days it was harmless fun. But on February 19th, the forest felt wrong. The sky was too clear, the air too still. Even the snow looked different, smooth, undisturbed, like it had been laid down gently by hand instead of falling from the clouds. We'd made it halfway up the ridge when Cody pointed to a cluster of spruce trees. "You hear that?" he asked. I shut off my engine. Silence. No wind, no rustling branches, no animal sounds, just nothing. "That's not normal," I said. "Probably weather inversion," Cody shrugged, already revving again. "Come on, last one to the summit buys dinner." He sped off. I followed because I didn't want him alone out there. I should have turned back. We reached the summit by dusk. Cody wanted to go further into the tree line, toward an area we'd never explored. "Just a quick run," he said. 10 minutes. Something deep in my gut twisted. "We shouldn't," he laughed. "Man, you worry too much." He rode ahead. I followed at a distance, watching his red taillight blink through the trees. Then the forest fell completely silent again. My engine sputtered, then died. I checked the fuel line. Fine. Battery? Fine. Ignition? Fine. Nothing was wrong mechanically. The forest had simply swallowed the sound. Through the trees, I saw Cody take a sharp turn and vanish into the dark. A second later, he screamed. The kind of scream that ends too quickly. Cut off. Smothered. I sprinted toward him on foot, stumbling through knee-deep snow until I reached a narrow ravine half hidden by fallen branches. Cody's snowmobile lay upside down in the snow, headlight flickering. But Cody wasn't there. No footprints. No drag marks. No blood. Just his glove lying perfectly centered on the seat, like it had been placed there gently. The forest stayed silent. Too silent. Something watched me. I felt it behind me before I heard it. A faint, wet breathing. Low, gurgling, steady. Not Cody's. Not human. "Cody?" I whispered, even though I knew that breathing wasn't his. The breathing stopped instantly, like whatever made the sound was surprised I'd heard it. Then, a second breath, closer, right behind me. Hot, rotten, wrong. I turned slowly. Nothing was there, but the snow behind me was sinking, like something heavy was stepping forward without leaving footprints. I ran. I didn't care where. I just ran. The silence followed me like a shadow. By the time I reached the summit again, night had fallen. I stumbled to my snowmobile, shaking, and tried to restart it. It roared to life instantly. Nothing wrong with it. Nothing ever had been. I tore down the ridge trail at full throttle, snow spraying behind me. I made it back to town in under 10 minutes, far faster than I should have. I burst into the ranger station. "Cody's gone!" I shouted. "Something took him." 4 rangers geared up immediately. They knew that look in someone's eyes. People didn't vanish in Juneau Ridge often, but when they did, it wasn't weather. We rode back together. But by the time we reached the summit, the forest wasn't silent anymore. It was humming, softly, a low, vibrating hum that didn't sound natural. The rangers scanned the area. They found Cody's overturned snowmobile exactly where I'd left it. His glove was gone. Everything else remained untouched. "We'll sweep the perimeter," one ranger said. Then the lights in the forest flickered, flashes of white and blue like distant headlights. "Someone's coming," another said. We all turned. A snowmobile was approaching, headlight on, engine purring smoothly. At first we thought it was one of ours. Then it came closer, closer. And my stomach turned to ice. It was Cody's snowmobile, the one lying upside down behind us, but this one was upright, moving, driving toward us at a slow, steady pace. No tracks behind it, no spray of snow from the treads. It was gliding. The ranger stepped back, unsure. I stepped forward, because I saw the rider, Cody, helmet on, jacket zipped, sitting upright, but his posture, too stiff, too straight, too wrong, like someone had snapped his spine into a perfect line and propped him there. The snowmobile stopped 10 feet from us. Cody didn't move. "Cody?" I whispered. His head turned, slowly, so slowly the helmet creaked. Then he spoke, not through the helmet speaker, not through his mouth, through the air, soft, breathy, a whisper echoing inside itself. "It's quiet now." One ranger swore under his breath. Another raised his rifle, but Cody's head tilted in a jerking, unnatural motion. The helmet slipped slightly, revealing a glimpse of his jaw. Frozen gray skin, teeth clenching too hard, eyes unmoving. Something was using his body. I stepped backward. The snowmobile engine growled. Then the voice spoke again, louder this time. "Come back." The rangers acted fast. 2 of them lunged, trying to pull Cody off the seat. But the moment they touched him, the forest fell silent again. The humming stopped. Everything stopped. And the temperature dropped so fast my eyelashes froze. The ranger staggered back as Cody's body twisted unnaturally, like something inside him didn't understand how joints worked. Then the snowmobile reversed, not turned around, reversed, perfectly straight, back into the trees. Then it vanished, no tracks left behind, no engine sound, just gone. They never found Cody. Search parties combed the ridge for a week, nothing. But on the 8th night, while I tried to sleep, my phone buzzed with a message. No number, no ID, just a single audio file. I pressed play. Snowmobile engine noise, steady, slow, gliding. Then Cody's voice whispered through static. "It's quiet here, you should come back." I blocked the number. An hour later, another message came. Then another. Dozens. All empty audio files, all snowmobile engines, all whispers, and all ending with the same 3 words. "I'm waiting, Ryan." I smashed the phone. The next night, a snowmobile engine idled outside my house at 3:12 a.m. I didn't look outside. I didn't need to. Because the whisper came through the walls. "It's quiet now." And when I finally peeked through the blinds at sunrise, there were snowmobile tracks in my yard, but they started at my front door. Not from the street, from the doorway inward, like something had been waiting right up against the house, breathing, listening, practicing my name.